Somebody told you to run slower to get faster, and you laughed at them. You're still laughing. That's the problem. You've been sprinting through every single run like you're being chased by something, chest tight, breathing ragged, convinced that if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count, and you wonder why you're still stuck at the same pace you hit 8 months ago. I'm going to tell you something that's going to sting a little. Your body isn't the bottleneck here. Your ego is. You've built a training habit around suffering instead of adaptation, and those are not the same thing. Suffering feels productive. It isn't. Adaptation is quiet. It's boring. It doesn't post well on social media. And that's exactly why nobody talks about it. Because I ran easy today and felt kind of great. Doesn't get likes the way I destroyed myself on the treadmill does. Here's the part that's going to make you uncomfortable. Researcher Stephen Seiler spent years studying elite endurance athletes, cyclists, rowers, runners, cross-country skiers, the whole spectrum of people who get paid to suffer efficiently. And what he found, again and again, across different sports and different countries, was almost identical. These athletes spend roughly 80% of their training time at low intensity, genuinely easy, conversational, almost embarrassingly slow effort. Only about 20% is spent in that hard, breathless, red zone territory you live in every single time you lace up. 80% easy, 20% hard, not 50-50, not moderate all the time, which is what most recreational runners actually do without realizing it. You're not training like an elite athlete. You're training like someone stuck in the worst possible middle ground, too hard to recover, too easy to actually build the top-end fitness you're chasing. That's not a motivational quote. That's a documented pattern across decades of performance data. So let's do the reality check, because I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, if I slow down, I'll get slower. That's the most common myth in every beginner and even intermediate runner's head, and it's backwards. When you run easy, genuinely easy, your heart is pumping more blood per beat because it has time to fill completely between contractions. That's called stroke volume, and it's one of the primary reasons trained runners often have resting heart rates in the 40s, sometimes even the 30s, compared to the average untrained adult sitting around 70. Your heart becomes a bigger, more efficient pump, but that adaptation, that beautiful, expensive, structural change to your actual cardiovascular system, doesn't happen when you're redlining. It happens in the easy zone, where your heart has time and oxygen supply to remodel itself instead of just surviving the next 30 seconds. Now here's a question that should annoy you a little. If slow running builds the engine, what exactly is all your hard running doing? Because you're not doing zero. You're doing hard most of the time, thinking it's building your engine, when really it's just teaching your nervous system to tolerate discomfort without actually improving the machinery underneath. You're revving a car in neutral and calling it a road trip. Let's talk about what actually happens inside your muscle cells, because this is where it gets almost unfair how simple the fix is. Every muscle fiber you own has mitochondria in it, tiny structures that convert oxygen and fuel into usable energy. The more mitochondria you have and the denser they are, the longer you can run before your body has to switch to anaerobic, lactate-producing, everything burns mode. Classic exercise physiology research going back to the 1960s and confirmed repeatedly since shows that consistent aerobic training can dramatically increase mitochondrial density in trained muscle, sometimes by a significant multiple compared to untrained tissue. That's not something you build by going hard. You actually blunt that adaptation when you're constantly hammering high intensity, because your body doesn't get the sustained low-stress signal it needs to invest in building more of those little energy factories. It's building bunkers for survival instead of factories for output. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it flips the entire mental model you've been running on. You thought hard was the tool. Hard is actually just one tool, used sparingly at the right moment, layered on top of a foundation you've been skipping. Here's where it gets personal. Think about your last frustrating run, the one where your legs felt like wet cement by minute 20, where you checked your watch every 90 seconds, hoping it was almost over, where you finished and thought, why does this still feel this hard? I'd bet real money that run wasn't actually easy or actually hard. It was stuck in the middle, that gray zone runners fall into by accident, running at a pace that feels productive because it's uncomfortable, but isn't actually training either system properly. Not slow enough to build the aerobic base. Not hard enough to build real top-end speed or lactate tolerance. It's the fitness equivalent of doing dishes with your gloves half on, miserable and somehow still not clean. So what do you actually do with this? Here's the part where I stop making you feel bad and start giving you something you can use tomorrow morning. On your easy days, and this needs to be most of your days, you should be able to hold a full conversation, not gasping out single words between breaths. An actual conversation, sentences, maybe even complaining about your job. If you can't talk, you're going too hard and you're stealing the adaptation your body was about to give you for free. That's it. That's the whole secret nobody wants to hear because it sounds too simple to be real advice. Run slower than your pride wants to allow, more often than feels productive, and save the actual hard efforts, real hard, breathless, focused hard, for 1 or 2 days a week where you go all in on purpose. But don't stop there, because there's a second lever most runners never touch, and it's not about running at all. A body of research compiled through systematic reviews on strength training and endurance performance, including work analyzing multiple studies on distance runners, has shown that structured resistance training, real strength work, squats, deadlifts, plyometrics, can meaningfully improve running economy. Running economy is basically how much oxygen you burn to maintain a given pace. Improve that number, and you run the same speed using less energy, which means you can hold that speed longer before you fall apart. Some of these findings show improvements in economy in the high single digits, sometimes touching double digits, just from adding 2 focused strength sessions a week. That's free speed, not from running more. From doing something in the weight room twice a week that most runners actively avoid because they think it'll make them bulky or tired for their next run. Let that sink in for a second because it should feel almost insulting. You've been avoiding the gym to protect your running, and the actual research says the gym might be one of the fastest ways to make your running better. Here's a contradiction that should bother you. You think rest days are for the weak, something you tolerate instead of something you use. But your muscles don't get stronger while you're running. They get stronger while you're recovering from running. The stimulus happens on the road. The adaptation happens on your couch, in your bed, during the boring hours you're not tracking on any app. Skip that part consistently, and you're not committed. You're just accumulating fatigue that eventually shows up as an injury, a plateau, or both at the same time, which is somehow worse. I want to walk you through what a smarter week actually looks like, without turning this into a spreadsheet, because that's not what this is about. Picture most of your runs feeling almost suspiciously comfortable. You finish them thinking, I could have done more, and that feeling, that slight itch of unused energy, is not a failure. That's the entire point. That's what a properly easy day feels like. Then, once or maybe twice a week, you go somewhere your legs actually remember. Intervals, tempo work, hill repeats, something that genuinely hurts in a focused, purposeful way, not a random, exhausting way. The contrast between those two feelings, suspiciously easy most days, genuinely hard occasionally, is the entire engine of improvement. Everybody skips the first part and wonders why the second part stops working. Here's a number that should stop you mid-scroll if you're the type who logs every mile like it's a religious ritual. Some coaches and physiologists point to injury and burnout risk climbing sharply in runners who spend too much of their weekly volume in that moderate hard middle zone, the exact zone most self-coached runners default to without meaning to. You're not just failing to improve. You might be quietly building the exact pattern that leads to the shin pain, the knee ache, the mysterious fatigue that shows up out of nowhere 3 weeks from now. Slow running isn't just about speed gains. It's about staying uninjured long enough to actually get those gains. Let's go back to that heart rate conversation for a second, because I think it's the single most misunderstood number in your entire running life. Your max heart rate is not a badge of honor. Hitting it every single run isn't dedication, It's a lack of pacing discipline dressed up as effort. Elite athletes, the ones with actual physiological data tracked across their careers, treat their easy runs as sacred, almost boringly protected. They don't creep the pace up because a stranger passed them on the trail. They don't turn a recovery run into a tempo run because they're feeling good. That restraint, that specific, deliberate patience, is what separates someone who improves for years from someone who improves for 2 months, and then plateaus, gets hurt, or quits out of frustration, convinced their body just isn't built for this. Your body is built for this. It's built for a lot more than you're currently asking of it, honestly. The ceiling on human aerobic adaptation is genuinely high, higher than almost anyone reaches in their lifetime, because most people never train consistently enough, patiently enough, or with enough structure to get anywhere near it. You're not limited by genetics at the level you're operating at right now. You're limited by a training pattern that's working against your own physiology. And the frustrating, almost funny part is that fixing it requires you to do less, not more, on most days. So here's the moment where I want you to actually feel this instead of just hearing it. Think about tomorrow's run, whatever it's supposed to be on your schedule, on your app, in your head. I want you to go into it and deliberately, uncomfortably, hold yourself back. Run at a pace that almost embarrasses you a little. The kind of pace where you catch yourself wanting to speed up just to prove something to nobody in particular. And then don't. Finish that run and notice how your legs feel afterward compared to your usual finish line collapse. Notice that you could probably run again tomorrow instead of needing 2 days to recover from a run that was never supposed to be a race in the first place. That feeling, that slightly unsatisfying, slightly too easy feeling, is your body quietly building the exact adaptations you've been chasing through pure suffering for months. The engine gets built in silence. The applause happens later, on race day, when everyone else is falling apart at mile 18, and you're still holding form because you actually respected the process instead of fighting it the entire time. That's the truth nobody wants to put in a highlight reel. Slower, more often, patient, boring, unglamorous, and it works better than every single hard effort you've been proud of on your worst days. Your body was never the limit. Your relationship with discomfort was. Now here's something to chew on before you go. Some runners take this exact same information, the same easy pace, the same strength work, the same rest days, and they improve at a rate that looks almost unfair compared to everyone else doing the identical plan next to them. Same effort, wildly different results. And it's not just genetics, though. Genetics plays a role nobody likes to admit out loud. There's something else going on underneath. Something about how certain runners respond to training stimulus that most coaches quietly know about, but almost never explain clearly. Because honestly, it makes some people uncomfortable. That's exactly what we're getting into next time. Why some people seem to improve absurdly fast on the same training plan that barely moves the needle for everyone else, and why almost nobody talks about it. If this changed how you're going to run tomorrow, do something about it right now. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a like if you actually felt that gut punch moment somewhere in here. And comment below telling me where in the world you're watching this from. I genuinely read every single one. Share this with the one running friend who refuses to slow down no matter how many times you've told them. And if you want to go deeper, there's a membership link pinned in the comments for anyone who wants more of this. Straight, no fluff, no filler.